Milo must have access to something far more potent if he found what they had to be dual. There were more remarkable things Rex had, but he wouldn't show them off to a complete stranger so soon after meeting. But he had a good feeling about working with Milo. We don't know much about these new vampires, but we've started to fill in the gaps. About the zompires in particular, Rex stated as he proceeded to hand over the zompire documents to Milo. They had relocated to a separate office and were now sitting around a circular table. They seemed to be at different levels of decay. But they all seemed to have the same speed and strength. Rex continued. Milo browsed the papers, showing only lukewarm interest in what he was reading. I see. I take it you also have files on the Netopuri like this. Rex paused before responding. He'd only heard the phrase Netopuri a few times. The first was from Malachi, the priest who had sponsored the C.R.O.W project, and the second was from the beast itself. Yet this wasn't the first time Milo had said something that made Rex wonder how much he knew. He'd used the phrase zompire, which he knew was just a term used among their group. Then even knowing the correct phrase for the simpler vampires intrigued him. Yes, but that's hardly relevant. I would like to focus on the zompires today. We have evidence suggesting they are a variant of another kind of vampire. Yet we've only ever faced up against a single one of them. Thinking about how rapidly things escalated, he stopped talking. Everything Milo needed to know was recorded on official documents. Rex would do well to act as though it wasn't as traumatic as it was. Rex took another file out and handed it to Milo. The thing is, this one seemed to be able to think on its own. So what makes you think she's the same as the zompires? Milo asked as he read through the pages. It died the same way as the zompires. Rex said with a shrug. The way I see it is they start out that way and their mind slowly roots until it is just a mindless monster. What evidence do you have of this? Milo asked, his eyes on the paper the whole time. We have very little to go by. I'm still up for any new information we can get. Rex watched Milo more carefully. He wasn't telling them everything. He had to have known more than he was letting on. But Rex was quickly starting to like him. He was quiet and despite not sharing much now. Which in Rex reasoned, was a good thing. He was also trying to figure out if he could trust C.R.O.W. He knew Milo could be a great asset to the team. Grendel, on the other hand, appeared to be little more than a nuisance. He looked to be high even now. He could hardly sit up straight. His head rested against Milo's arm, one leg hanging on the side of the opposite armrest. He wondered if they were gay and shuddered at the thought. Have you met any of the smarter zompires yet? Rex asked, hoping to extract more from Milo before they left that day. I'm afraid the knowledge I can give you is very limited. Milo's hands slipped and a photo from the file he was looking at landed on the table. Grendel watched the photograph as it toppled onto the table. He was probably too high to even comprehend what he was looking at, Rex thought to himself. Then Grendel shouted just as Rex was about to speak. I'm bored, as he swung away from Milo and over to the side where Victoria was sitting. He slouched forward in the chair, almost touching her shoulder. How did you do it? How did you kill one of the smart zompires without anyone being hurt if they're so tough to kill? All the information you need may be found in the file. Rex growled in the hopes of scaring him away from Victoria. It doesn't look like they did, Milo said, addressing Grendel. It looks as if one person died and 2 others were injured. Oh no, that's so sad. Grendel's voice was monotone, and his stare was empty as he looked around the room. Milo gave him a sidelong glance. I wasn't talking about the C.R.O.W. The humans were harmed and 1 died. This time, Grendel sat up, wide-eyed. No, I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. That's terrible. He cast a tense glance around the room, as if only now realizing where he was. He turned to Milo with his mouth agape. Rex could have punched Grendel in the face at that moment, but there were more important things to do and he was going to be the bigger person. I'm sorry for your loss, Grendel said to Victoria. Losing a loved one is never easy. Were you too close? He grasped for her hand, a convincing look of concern that filled Rex with rage. But it was okay, it would never work on Victoria. Rex shot Grendel a dark look. Letting go of Victoria's hand, Grendel melted back into his chair so only the top of his head was visible to Rex. When Rex raised the point that there are more important things that they needed to be talking about right now, everyone listened. He could no longer see Grendel but his stupid face was burnt into his mind. Yet another worthless slob. He pondered what, exactly, Milo saw in him that made him think he could be an asset to him. Not important. Grendel straightened up. They served as a member of your squad. How could you possibly dismiss their significance? This was not going to end well, Rex reasoned. Victoria, Ashley, and even Justin had their heads down as in a moment of silence. Indeed, Ashley A's death was tragic. But she wasn't going to remain there indefinitely. The only reason she was there was because she was dating his sister. She would have been a distant memory as soon as they recognized it was meaningless and moved on with their lives. But it would never happen now. She'd be burned into everyone's mind, and his sister left with this ridiculous notion that she may have been the one. That was the end of it. Rex smacked his hands on the table. He considered forcing them to go, but just as he was ready to say anything, he remembered what Milo said. He called the not zompire something else. But he couldn't recall what it was. He made an effort to relax. What did Milo know? We can all talk about our feelings and how sad we are after the horde of evil monsters are dead. But right now we have to talk about how we are going to stop them. Why was Rex the only one who understood this? Grendel leaned in close to Victoria, speaking in her ear loud enough for everyone to hear. Do you have good health insurance? Victoria gave him a perplexed glance. I mean, I've seen worse situations before, and it's never cheap. Grendel spoke so solemnly that it forced her to engage with the nonsense he was trying to get at. What are you on about? Victoria inquired, a fleeting glance at him followed by a return to the rest of the room. She attempted not to interact but yet not wanting to appear rude. That rod in his ass is going to have to come out at some point, Grendel lingered, now with a cheeky grin on his face. He must have thought he was so funny. Then Victoria did something Rex couldn't forgive. She laughed, a real chuckle. She soon realized her error and covered her mouth. Trying to appear to be professional. Grendel sat there, a pleased expression on his face. He was either the dumbest person on the planet or he was attempting to crawl beneath Rex's skin on purpose. Out! Rex yelled. You want us to go? Milo asked, maintaining his cool manner throughout. I mean, no, yes. Rex could feel himself growing agitated. Typically, he could compose himself better. But the way Grendel was acting, he couldn't help himself. You don't say things like that, it was unprofessional. And the way he hit on Victoria all day. She wouldn't fall for some, no-bone, jelly loser like him. Just him, Rex said, pointing to Grendel. He can't possibly be here. We're going to be discussing top-secret matters, and his simply. Just leave. Grendel's expression widened as Rex pointed at Grendel and then the door. All right, he said as he sprang off the table. I'll just go play with some of your toys. Honestly, that seems like a lot more fun than this. No, Rex mumbled. Do not touch anything. How, then, are you going to stop me? Grendel's eyes broadened, mirroring his smile. Devon, follow him. Rex exploded. Be certain that he does not touch anything. Grendel walked out of the side room with a bounce in his step following Devon out. Once they were a few feet into the room, Grendel sprung toward Devon, catching him from behind and clinging to him as they went. You've been unusually silent tonight. Is there a problem? Devon pulled away from him, as he made it to his desk and sat down in his chair. This is simply who I am. You just don't know me. Grendel watched with interest, maintaining his bright grin. He was great at reading people. And this wasn't the person he was talking to through emails. Or had he just read him wrong? He pushed that thought aside. That couldn't be the answer. He grabbed the seat next to Devon, pulling himself over. Oh come on, don't be that way. I thought we were friends. We are not friends. Devon snapped. There was a sharpness to his voice that made Grendel flinch. Since when? He asked, trying to appear he was hurt by this statement. But mostly, he was confused. He thought he did a good job at worming his way into Devon's trust. None of this made any sense. He had to maintain a specific appearance. He needed to project an image of kind, friendliness, and, most crucially, incompetence. He had to seem clueless to pull this off. No one trusted the smartest person in the room. Oh, are you jelly that I was chatting up the ladies instead of you? He leaned forward, towing the line between playful and seductive, strategically placing his hand on Devon's upper thigh. How can I make it up to you? Grendel saw the reddening of Devon's face and assumed victory. We are not friends, Devon said with an icy tone, facing Grendel. I know who and what you are and why you're here. I know who I am too. Grendel answered, with a wink and a grin. I can't help it. I'm just the most charming person in the room. People love me. You're a Corsac, and I'm not interested in being your next meal. After saying this, he swung around and looked at the monitor in front of him. Grendel reclined on his chair. That would have been different if he had used the term vampire or some such phrase. Devon, on the other hand, recognized the name. He attempted to maintain his artificial grin, but it began to fade as he watched Devon with one hand covering part of his face. Why didn't he just tell the others as they walked in? That was the notion that kept going through Grendel's head. Yet he couldn't ask that question. Devon might not have said anything for the simple reason he hadn't thought to do so. It may have been the impetus he needed to say something. Yet it was all Grendel could think of. Grendel took up his surroundings quickly. He was certain that he and Milo could simply flee. Yet if something bad happened to Milo, even if it was minor, he would be unable to forgive himself for a long time. After all, this was his idea. Grendel leaned forward, gathering himself. How? How do you know that? There was no use in denying it now. Devon regarded Grendel coolly, his eyes hard. I've been tracking you and your kind for a long time. We know who you are and what you're capable of. Unlike the normal vampires, you guys could walk in daylight and eat food if you want. Grendel leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. He had underestimated C.R.O.W. He had thought they were just a bunch of amateurs, but clearly they were much more organized than he had anticipated. He wondered how much they knew. Quickly worrying about his family, like Richard, Molly and their small child Olive. How much do you know? He asked, his voice low. Devon shrugged. Enough. Grendel became so engrossed that he forgot about his mask. He glanced over at the conference room before returning his attention to Devon. How come they didn't recognize me? Whispering as he leaned in. Devon hesitated for a moment, eyeing Grendel warily. I don't know. Maybe they just didn't see your face clearly. Or maybe they weren't paying attention. Grendel leaned in closer, his eyes fixed on Devon's face. You're not telling me everything, he said, his voice low and dangerous. Devon's jaw tightened. He knew he was playing a dangerous game, but he couldn't bring himself to reveal everything he knew about Grendel and his kind. He had his reasons for keeping some things to himself. Grendel was going to find out what that was. He kept his sights on Devon as a small bead of sweat began to pull and drip down his face. Because all my research was destroyed. And if I let them know I remember too much. Say your face. Then they would find out I know more and I don't want to see them killing children. So how did they get destroyed? Grendel, still watching him intently. I didn't burn them. I didn't say you, Grendel started to say as a smile crept on his face. Oh, but you did. He moved in closer. Is that why everyone is giving you the stink eye? Why did you do it? Devon didn't answer, every muscle in his body seemed to tighten up. He no longer was locked onto the computer, but he still didn't dare look at Grendel. This wasn't good. Grendel sat back in his chair, considering Devon's words. He knew that he couldn't stay with the group forever, but he also knew that leaving would come with its own risks. For now, he needed to figure out a way to protect himself and Milo, and he couldn't do that without more information. Listen, Devon, Grendel said, leaning forward once again. I don't want to fight with you or the rest of the group. But I need to know what they know about me and my kind. Can you help me out with that? They don't understand what we are. And like you said, there are children we need to protect. He needed Devon on his side more than ever. The others know very little. But if he started killing people now, he was sure Devon would say something. Devon hesitated for a moment before nodding. I'll see what I can do. But you need to be careful, Grendel. They're not going to go easy on you if they find out you're a vampire. If he left things like this, it could be bad. He would have to lighten the mood. Don't worry, I got the perfect alibi for you. Grendel then moved in even closer, his speech barely audible, as though they were at a sleepover discussing boys. I can see it now. Grendel said this as he placed his hand on Devon's shoulder and drew his hand in front of them, as if sketching an invisible rainbow. It was going to be a beautiful day. So you went on an exciting wilderness walk. The sun is shining, the birds are chirping, and so on. Grendel made a motion with his hands, continuing the narrative. When you found yourself in the middle of a snowstorm. Grendel grabbed Devon for emphasis. You had no option but to seek sanctuary in the cave with your one and only comrade, the Yeti. What? Devon drew back. How did the Yeti get here? Shush, I'm narrating the story, Grendel protested. He was there the entire time, but he was too busy doing other things to be essential to the plot until now. What is his significance to the plot? Shush. Let me tell the story. So you and the Yeti are trapped in the freezing cave. And all you have with you is a backpack with all the information you have about the C.R.O.W. The Yeti instructs you to burn it, but you know you can't. This information is much too valuable. But, no. Grendel snatched Devon again, squeezing his face this time. The pregnant mother is going to give birth. Grendel's voice softened as Devon drew away. There is now a pregnant woman? Where did she come from? He backed away, more irritated by the conflicting tale than anything else. And don't claim she was present the entire time. Maybe she was trying to find a place to hide from the storm too. Grendel shrugged, having no conviction in his answer. A pregnant woman at 9 months. Why was she out in the storm in the first place? That's simply stupid. You're terrible at telling stories. You're the one who destroyed the files, I'm just trying to give you an out. Grendel inquired, noting Devon seemed more at ease. No, I didn't. He spoke with less conviction this time, and his gaze flickered from Grendel to the conference room. Blink 5 times if you don't feel safe. Grendel questioned, and Devon moved in closer before blinking, much to his surprise. Their noses would have touched if one of them moved. You're correct, I don't feel comfortable. Do you want to know why? Devon inquired gently, while Grendel nodded. Because I'm hearing the most horrible goddamn story I've ever heard in my whole life. He then reclined in his chair. And the narrator is a vampire who is probably coming to kill everyone, including myself. So why don't you simply tell them, grumbled Grendel. He had to be cautious. Devon would ponder about it or, worse, convince himself into informing the others if he posed that question too many times. He needed to convince him that they were friends, or at the very least on the same side. The truth is, Grendel's grin had vanished. Now for the lovely Grendel, who only smiles to disguise his profound dark agony because no one knows who he truly is. He hung his head low, as if he was about to reveal a terrible secret. The truth is that I want the zompires dead. And I'm worried that if it's just the two of us, Milo will get injured. I wanted to find somebody who could assist me. He raised his head to check whether he was getting through to Devon. You know, it's only been the two of us for so long, I don't believe I'd be able to face it if something happened to him. You're using us as cannon fodder. Devon responded without passion in his voice. As he spoke, Grendel removed the mask of sadness off his face. Knowing the sob story wasn't going to plan. Fine, yeah. Grendel confessed, throwing his hands up. But don't look at it like that. It's more like a mutual, fondling. Fodder? He quickly corrected himself with a cheeky grin. Like you guys are only humans, if you have us help we can get more done. And if you get lucky we will become overconfident and get ourselves killed. The muscles in Devon's body finally seemed to relax as he contemplated this. Grendel grabbed his hand, pulling it close to his face. Please don't tell the big, bad, scary vampire killers who we really are, placing a gentle peck on his hand as he pouted, giving the most desperate face he could muster. Please? Reluctantly, Devon nodded as Grendel pulled away. And for the record, I'm a fantastic storyteller.